Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us through this Art of Networking workshop. This session is designed really for individuals who are really interested in understanding the networking as a leader versus, anything else, and how to build your business relationships on the networking that you may be doing or from the networking that you're doing. So without further ado, let's just dive in. Thanks for joining. So it would be awesome through that chat, if you don't mind, just your first name, what do you do, one word that describes you, or when I say networking, what do you think comes to your mind? And of course, we'd love to hear one thing that you would like to get out of today's session. I'm going to cover the networking ideas, where to network, how do you network, and of course, any next steps that you may want to be thinking about for the networking. You can, of course, ask anytime, any questions that you may have. For those who haven't met yet, my name is Faris Alami. I'm the founder of International Strategic Management. We do entrepreneurship and small business development, working mainly in underserved, underrepresented, or minority groups. And generally speaking, we work with organizations that supports them establishing entrepreneurship activities or small business development activities or talent activities or mentorship activities or funding activities in that specific community. I'm originally from Palestine, grew up in Kuwait, and left to the US during the first Gulf War. Many of you might have heard about the backstory of this, so I won't bore you with the details. With the t-shirt business in the early 90s, raising funds for nonprofits, then to wholesaling perfumes that grew up to about 500 people in 7 states, and then to doing technology online and selling online through the e-commerce. And then in early 2000, 2003, I did different retails, of course, throughout my whole career. I've done all kinds of retails from 1991 till then. Basically turned around some of the Macy's department stores. I was one executive team member. And then I joined a small beauty store that was backed up by a venture capital, helped them turn around one of the stores that they were acquired by mom and pop, and then opened up 7 more stores in a couple of states. And then in 2003, we founded ISM, which we basically focus on entrepreneurship and ecosystem development around small business, underserved communities, underrepresented communities, or minority groups. And our goal usually is to work with an organization like a nonprofit, a government agency, a government, city, to establish entrepreneurial activities in that community, such as training program, mentorship program, training the trainers, funding programs, activities where entrepreneurs could come prosper and start or grow businesses. We occasionally do directly work with entrepreneurs. Through all of our programs, we work with entrepreneurs through our partners, but occasionally we get few entrepreneurs that come through and work with us directly. I've been lucky to work with thousands of organizations. Many of them we won't be able to fit here, but most of them you wouldn't even heard about, but some of them you have, and here's a sample of them. And with, thousands of entrepreneurs globally in over 100 countries as of right now. We usually work around these pillars. So this is where the experience is coming from in these 5 pillars that you see on the slide. And, like I mentioned, there are lots of numbers that we track, but here's a sample of them: 100 countries and over 100,000 hours of advising, mentorship, or, working with entrepreneurs directly. All right. When I say networking, let's dive in. What does it mean to you? Yeah, please use the chat, And by the way, yes, I did put that on the slide, not IT networking or networking. I'm talking about networking as far as individuals or people. So when I say that, what comes to your mind? Please go ahead and in the chat or in the comments area, feel free to contribute what you think that means to you. I've asked this question to individuals in all kinds of places, from Russia to Oman to Myanmar to Detroit and everything else in between. And I've always gotten all kinds of wonderful and interesting answers. And yes, networking is anytime you are with people. It's not only when you go to a chamber of meeting. It's not only when you go to a networking event, which we have many of them throughout the day, as you can see on this platform. It's really all about networking. Anytime you interact with someone, anytime actually you're not even interacting with them, but you're sending them messages or posting, or they're interacting with you on social media, that's all networking. So anytime you're interacting with anyone, anytime, in person or virtual, is part of the networking. And the reason I bring that up, because I want you to rethink how you think about networking. I want you to think about networking as every time you have an opportunity, you're interacting with someone, it is a networking opportunity. Where do you do that? Well, I'll let you answer that. Think about it. Where can you do networking? You do it every day. Social media, you're doing it right now. You're doing it next time you send an email. You're doing it next time you meet someone. You're doing it next time you go to a networking event or to an event to learn or to teach. Either way, you're networking. So you could do it anywhere and everywhere. And thank you for those who started in the chat answering some of these questions. Yes, conferences, industry, speaking, events, all of these things are part of what you do for networking. So what I wanted to do is talk about the top 10 skills for networking. And this is what I've seen most networker really good at networking do. And personally, what I've reflected throughout the years to encourage people to think about. Now, please know that this is no right or wrong. It's just some concepts and some ideas for you to help think through it. The truth is, we do these kinds of workshops for hours, right? We usually do this 3 to 4 hours and sometimes a day or two, because we could take each one of these skills and break it down and have you practice it and get some examples on it. My goal for today is to give you a snapshot of it, so therefore you could dig your own on your own and do your own research in each one of them. And again, it's not meant to be right or wrong. It's just ideas for you to explore. And although we might have budgeted more time for you to be here with us, part of it was for you to network with other people. So let's meet. What I want to do is maybe in the chat or anywhere, in the comment section, please introduce yourself. Just tell people who you are, what you do, and where you're calling from. So one line, you can't write 15 sentences about what you do. So restaurant owner of Thai food, live in wherever you live, and then your name, and that would be an idea. And I want you to know is when I ask these questions, what's considered normal or norm for someone may not be the same. And this is where art of networking starts. Understanding that when I ask a question of introduce yourself, somebody might take a minute to go back and say, well, I was born here, and they might go through more details. Someone else might give you no details and say, well, I teach, and then that's it. And the norm is not really the same with every single person. And I want you to be aware of that, because as you are aware of that, it'll allow you to know how to network with them and how to be creative with networking with individuals. When you're not working, and I know a couple of people here may be joining us from startup technology entrepreneurs. You're startup technology entrepreneurs. What I've noticed a lot of times is you kind of like live in your own world, like I live in my own world with the entrepreneurship ecosystem, right? I say terminology, I say keywords that no one else knows what I'm talking about. Well, that might feel good for a second, if that's where you want to go. But in my perspective, it's terrible if no one knows what you're doing or what you're saying, because if they can't relate to you, then most likely they will not want to network with you. So understanding those kinds of concepts will allow you to have a better networking, which allows you to have a better network that probably opens up more doors for you. So here's a couple of things that you want to think about. Number one, if you're attending an event or being part of an event, be 15 minutes early. What you will notice is that most of the time, if you are early, you get to meet the organizers. You may be able to, they might ask you for help. They might ask you to do something. You get to see and observe what's going on. You might hear some insights, how this program came together, who's involved, who's not involved, who's going to speak, who's not going to speak. And you get to meet lots of wonderful people. So you might want to think about being 15 minutes earlier than the scheduled time is supposed to be. I caution you not to be too early, right? You don't want to be an hour and a half early, and you don't want to be an hour early, but 10 to 15 minutes early than the scheduled time allows you to do a little bit of understanding where to sit or to stand, what's the, if they're a protocol, the specific way that they want to do something. Sometimes if you're going to a specific building, there might be a registration or some other activities that needs to happen before you get there. So think about that as far as, being a little early for that meeting. You also get to meet sometimes the speakers before it gets too crazy. And usually that's much better time than trying to meet them when everybody else is trying to meet them at the end of the time. I would also caution you not to take too much time of their time, because many times they're preparing to speak or they're trying to figure out the last minute thoughts about a concept that they want to deliver. Number two, don't just offer a card, right? You don't want to be going around and say, here's my card, call me. Here's my card, call me. The goal would be with this is for you to really, I would say, collect cards versus giving cards, because the earnest or the burden of follow-ups now falls on your plate versus their plates. If you give your card out, whether they follow up or not, that's up to them. But if you collected their card, it's up to you to follow up or not. No, I'm not saying that they will respond to your follow-up, but I'm just saying you are now having the upper hand in the follow-up with that individual. Number three, of course, I always tell people, be interested, not interesting. Although it's much easier for us to be interested in what we do and what we know, because it's much easier for us to talk about. Being interested in them is really asking them all about the questions, right? And you will see that in the next slide, I'm going to talk about it. So you ask a lot of questions because you want to show that you're interested, and that's actually my number 4 hand in a minute. So asking them questions, do less talking, do more listening. Remember, we all have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So that equation should tell you that we should listen maybe twice as much as we should speak. Now, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. Again, it's just an idea for you to think about. So ask questions. What brings you in today? What do you do? How long you've been doing it for? And I would say listen to ask questions versus listens to respond. And what I mean by that, a lot of times I catch myself here and there. I'm sure some others maybe feel the same. You ask a question and you hear the response, and now you're thinking about how you're going to respond to the answer that they gave you. Well, that's interested, not interesting. I'm sorry, interesting, not interested. Interested would be, I asked them a question, I listened to an answer, and then I follow up on an question based on the answer that they gave me versus a comment on the answer that they gave me. So be interested in them and what they're doing and what they say versus trying to be interesting to entertain them with what you've done and what you could do or say. And this is what I was mentioning earlier. By asking those questions, you could also be more interested than interesting, and that could lead you to better networking as well. One thing I always mention, when you're networking, what do you think you're doing? A lot of times people, this is where they miss the boat, right? They go to networking because they want to sell. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't sell. You should sell in certain network events. There are some events that happens just for selling, and you should be out there networking to sell. But I would say most of the time, I would say majority of the networking that happens is not for sales. It's really about building relationships, getting to know the person, getting to build a rapport with them. So don't be going out there just trying to sell them what you got, right? And trying to get them to buy from you. I understand the need of doing that because that's why you're out sometimes. But if that's your only mission, I would encourage you to find only those networking opportunities for sales connections. And there are many of them, expos, and there are many times where they're asking you to display your product and services because they want you to sell, or you're going there to buy a product or service. But I would say most of the time people are networking, whether it's they're commenting on an Instagram or a Facebook or sending you an email, they're networking to know you and get to ask you questions or learn about you or working with you, but they're not interested in just buying from you. Some might be, but majority when they're networking, they're not really interested in that. Number 6, if you are in a networking event and there are people, I would encourage you to think about helping them be introduced to other people, right? So that's out of networking to see, okay, who else do I know that could potentially benefit from talking to this individual, or this person could benefit from talking to them, or they may both benefit, right? So you want to think about that. Who else can I help them introduce them to that could potentially allow them to do more of what they're trying to do? And I would caution you, sometimes it's easy to say, well, do you know this person? Do you know that person? The truth is, dropping names can be somewhat misleading, because if you're dropping names, they might think you're trying to show off or you're trying to showcase something. And I would encourage you not to do that, only if it makes sense for you to mention someone's name that maybe you think they might know, or they might be related to, or they might be aware of their work. I would mention that. Otherwise, dropping names just for the sake of dropping names just won't do you any good in the networking events. And the last couple of items I wanted to bring up to your attention is you want to think about, you know, ask for their card at the end of the conversation, not in the beginning of the conversation. I've seen sometimes where networkers go in and just they say, "Can I get your card? Can I get your card? Hi, my name is Faris. Can I get your card?" And they don't know you. They don't know why you're asking for the card. So it's better if you wait till the end. Now, occasionally asking for the card up front might make sense. An example of that would be if they're a speaker and you want to follow up with them, say, "Hey, I enjoyed your presentation. Would love to stay in touch. Do you have a card?" Right? So just don't ask for the card alone. Ask with a comment for why you're asking for the card. Or you might have liked about a specific sentence that they said, and you might say, "I really enjoyed that one thing. I'd love to dig deep with you on it, or ask you a few more questions on how you came up with that. Would you mind if I follow up with you on a card?" Right? So asking for those kind of permission can allow you to have a better rapport, because remember, it's all about the relationship building. And the last thing I'm going to say is follow up. And these days we're getting all lazier, right? We just want to write an email. Occasionally, I would encourage you to write a thank you card and just drop it in the mail. People get less and less mail today, especially from people about thanking them. So when you do that, you might stand out, and that might make you a little bit more different than everyone else that they've talked to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't send an email. I'm just saying this could be an additional opportunity for you to do something like that. I'm throwing in the 11th one, although I said 10, watching to see if anyone paid attention. When you're networking, I would caution you, especially if you are trying to get a new work or if you're trying to explain something, to not let your past control your future. Your past is not your future. As a matter of fact, your past can shape your future, but it doesn't have to. But it could also teach you from the past so you could have a better future. So make sure when you're talking about your past to make sure that you're using your past to leverage to advance your future, not to keep you in the past. And one example I use by that is if you've always been in a job A, I'm going to call it, and you want to be in a job B, or the other way around, you've always done a job B, so you've been an assistant manager and you want to be a store manager. Don't keep your conversation all the time about you being an assistant manager. Mention that you've been one and you've managed this store and you move to transition to managing. So therefore the conversation talks about the future, not necessarily just the past. And the last comment I'm going to mention, it's not about you when you're networking. It's about them. And if you could get that away from me today and just walk away with this one concept, when you're networking, it's not about you, it's about them. I think the art of networking will start unfolding for you to get you where you want to be. I'm going to stop right here to get some final thoughts or questions or comments. And I will also say, make sure that you check out any egos. Sometimes people have egos because you maybe accomplished something or you may be on top of the world, and that's nice. But just remember, when you're networking, you're all about them. It's not about you. And it's about you listening to them. It's not about you. It's about you being interested in them. It's not about you. So therefore, the ego needs to be checked out. My attitude has always been, when you meet the person for the first time, whether it's, by the way, online, virtually, which is fantastic these days, or in person, the conversation will be over once it's over, but it's up to you to follow up with it and see what you can do with that. And I think where the follow-up comes in is those who are really good at networking will do a little bit of homework to figure out who is the person that I spoke with. Can I do any research on them? And then can I follow up with specifics with them? And that's usually more powerful because then it'll keep you remembered because of the effort that you've done. So thank you for being here. You already know how to reach me. I appreciate it. Have a great day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you online throughout the week, and we'll talk soon. Again, this is Faris Alami. This was The Art of Networking.